Hello and welcome to the Jazz Journey with Doug Hall. I'm your host, Doug Hall, and our guest today is Grammy-award winning pianist, bandleader, and composer, jazz artist Kris Davis, who released the acclaimed recording Run the Gauntlet in 2024 with her superb trio featuring bassist Robert Hurst and drummer Johnathan Blake. Davis has released 26 recordings as a leader or co-leader and collaborated with artists such as Terri Lyne Carrington, Dave Holland, John Zorn, Craig Taborn, Ingrid Laubrock, Tyshawn Sorey, and Esperanza Spalding, and others. She was named a 2021 Doris Duke Artist alongside Wayne Shorter and Danilo Perez, Pianist of the Year for DownBeat magazine in 2025, 2022, and 2020. And Pianist and Composer of the Year by the Jazz Journalists Association in 2021. So a warm welcome to you, Kris. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're excited to have you on our broadcast and to talk about your musical career and more particularly current recording, Run the Gauntlet, and then also some discussion about your upcoming release in September, Lost in Geneva. So I just thought with an opening question, I'm going to kind of look at a quote that from you related to Lost in Geneva, but I think it's a larger question that you address. As the audience may or may not realize, of course, that jazz trios or jazz groups do travel extensively together as bandmates. And I'm going to use a quote from you regarding this experience. Quote, "We've been touring steadily for a few years now, and I feel a real clarity about who we are as a trio. I wanted to write music that highlights our strengths, grounded and open enough to explore and engage with my compositional language," unquote. So, Kris, if you might, could you expand a little bit on that musical influence of being together so intensely?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when the trio got together, it might have been 5 years ago now. We had a week at the Village Vanguard, and I played with Johnathan quite a bit in the past, and just loved his playing. He's such an interactive player and has such a deep pocket and groove. And I've been a huge fan of Robert Hurst for many years, playing with Wynton and Branford Marsalis, and also his own records. And so I thought it would be cool to put this trio together and see, where that might go with my compositional language. And at first it was pretty open and exploratory. And over time, the pieces have kind of tightened up, and I've written things that really make Robert and Johnathan shine in terms of groove. There's sort of repetitive baseline ostinatos, and the piece Run the Gauntlet was originally written for Johnathan Blake because he's such a wonderful player over repetitive ostinatos, finding different ways to frame them. Right. And so, after playing together and being on the road for a couple of years, it was just clear, like, I can write sort of more atonal lines and harmonies that are, for me, like, I'm really inspired by Olivier Messiaen and Luciano Berio and Ligeti. So these kind of contemporary classical composers are really part of my language as a composer and improviser, blended with Robert and Johnathan just playing this deep pocket and groove, and this using the pieces as vehicles for interaction.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's kind of beyond, I think, explanation, certainly when you have three musicians together who are on somewhat the same wavelength and chemistry and coming up with ideas and kind of coexisting together musically. It's an amazing chemistry. Well, moving to our listening portion, we're going to give the audience an opportunity to listen to the acclaimed release by Kris Davis of Run the Gauntlet in 2024 with the title cut, Run the Gauntlet. And Kris, did you want to set that up for us at all? Just a little bit of background?
Yeah, so yeah, as I mentioned, I wrote this for Johnathan, and it started with this kind of ostinato, and I like to, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself here, but do you remember those like choose your own adventure books?
I do, yes.
I feel like my pieces have a lot of this approach where there's like multiple lines that can be chosen from each player.
Right.
And so it's a kind of choose your own adventure, create your own sort of story, in this repetitive thing. So there's these options that the bass can play the first line or the second line, and it just expands and extends the written material. And so the idea was to take this ostinato and then really lean into the idea of like, let me write a bunch of ostinatos and see what that might sound like as a piece in its entirety. So it's a long piece. I think it's 10 minutes or so on the recording. And maybe we won't listen to all of that, but I think there's 6 or 7 ostinatos that sort of explore different sounds. And then there's like open sections where it's open for us to create a section within the piece.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're going to listen to the first 2 minutes of Kris Davis's trio recording title cut, Run the Gauntlet. Wow, there's really such a tight interplay between the 3 instruments, obviously piano, bass, and drums, but your intro is that very solid piano chordal statement that repeats itself, and they seem to start to blend into it and address it. And then you go off in another pace. And as the audience may want to know, this is a longer piece of 10 minutes, and there's a lot of change that occurs within the pace and the structure that makes the piece very, very intricate to listen to, particularly since you can focus on 3 instruments. So thank you. I was wondering if maybe you could tell the audience basically what ostinato means as kind of a general description.
Well, I'm using it as a sort of a repetitive phrase or section.
Got it.
In this case.
I see. Got it. So in a sense, the audience can hear the repetitive phrase, but changing from one piece within the composition to another piece within the composition.
Yeah, exactly. And, I hope your listeners will get a chance to hear the whole piece, because for me, it really only makes sense as a piece until you hear the whole thing, because, sometimes ostinatos get sort of... it can get tiresome to the ear, but there's something about going through the process of hearing these, multiple ostinatos, where you really lean into the idea, and it sort of goes from this, place of like, oh, another, it keeps going, it's repeating. And then,
Right.
you get to the point like, oh, actually, this is really cool.
Right.
Like, it's really stuck with this idea. So that's the concept of the piece.
Great. Okay, and I'm going to run right into the next cut. And if you could set up Coda Queen for us just before our listeners have a chance to listen to a portion of this composition.
Sure, yeah. This is another one of those choose your own adventure. There's these kind of 4 different lines to choose from. But it started as a piece that has 2 pitches in the left hand of the piano.
Okay.
And yeah, this, I don't know, maybe like 14 or 15 bars. It's just a cyclical thing.
Okay.
But there's a bass line that's kind of more groovy and busy underneath. You can choose a melody, you can improvise through it. And the task for the musicians is to really make a shape with the material that's there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's have a listen to a portion of Coda Queen. Well, there again, it's a very different flavor against Run the Gauntlet, as you said. In a sense, it's a quieter piece where we're listening more intricately to the piano, and then, as you said, the bassist and the drummer are kind of shaping a sound around it. And obviously, for the audience's sake, we are not able to listen to the complete composition, so we're missing, obviously, the evolution of this song. So again, highly recommend our listeners to return to and listen to the complete recording of Kris Davis's 2024 release, Run the Gauntlet. It's always kind of tricky to think of questions to ask jazz musicians, as I've had a number of podcast interviews, but I do try to kind of bend to each person who I'm researching and meeting with for the first time. I'm thinking in terms of asking you about the fact that obviously you're the leader of the trio, but yet what would you say these 2 current musicians kind of bring to you to complete this relationship? The bassist that you've spoken of, Robert Hurst, and the drummer Johnathan Blake.
Well, I think the biggest thing they bring to the trio, and for me, is a kind of support and a history with the music.
Okay.
Like when you feel when you hear Robert play quarter notes, you just know, like, you can feel, all the history
Okay.
in just
Interesting.
four quarter notes.
Okay.
It's
Right.
it's really amazing. And in the piano trio, I often work with younger musicians, but in the piano trio, I felt like I needed to be supported in a way that I could, that I was just very supported,
Got
I
it.
guess is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
And Johnathan is such a great listener, and I just feel like he's with me the whole way. He's interacting with me. We're playing off of, each other's
Okay.
ideas, and Robert too, but I like drummers that are, interactive, and again, you just
Right.
feel the history and all the experience in their sounds.
Right. Wow, wonderful explanation. Thank you. And not to digress, but I'm finding more and more when I see a trio live, I'm looking at the interplay of the drummer and the band leader. It's just I start to see that there's this connection, one driving the other. There are those moments in a
Yeah.
composition, particularly live, where that starts to happen.
Yeah, when I first heard Herbie Hancock and Tony Williams on the album My Funny Valentine 4 and More by Miles Davis,
Right.
I was 13, and I just thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. So
Wow.
there's always been a real admiration of the piano and drum relationship, and those guys do it the best. And I think that's what I'm always seeking, is that kind of interaction and energy between piano and drums.
Yeah. And I sometimes feel that in a trio, if you're really if you're an attentive listener and you're at a live performance and you're close to the stage within a jazz trio, that really translates if you're really listening or watching, really. So, well, wonderful. I'm going to hark back just to Berklee College of Music and your relationship there, and just ask you just kind of an open question about students in general. When I started my podcast, I fortunately had an opportunity to have Berklee students participate, probably the first 5 recordings I did. And they came from the Berklee Global Jazz Institute and the Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice. And of course, they always spoke about Danilo Perez, and they spoke about Terri Lyne Carrington. And for the audience's sake, Kris Davis, who we're currently interviewing on this podcast, is involved in the Berklee College of Music in Boston. She has been, or may currently, she can correct me, been the Associate Director of Creative Development for the Jazz and Gender Justice Program, and taught composition and improvisational courses. Could you talk just briefly about what you feel these programs specifically offer young, developing, gifted students in your firsthand experience?
Yeah, the Institute is set up mainly to support ensembles
Okay.
and create ensemble playing. And
Okay.
so within the Institute, we try to create gender balance within our ensembles. And, if you're a jazz fan or jazz musician, you probably have a sense that, there's, for a long time, there weren't a lot of women in the music, or maybe there was one woman in the band.
Right.
And so it's to kind of create this environment where there's more equality, in these kinds of dynamics and opportunities to play together.
Okay.
So that's just one of the things. Some of the things are about the canon of jazz. The Berklee Press put out these real books in the 70s.
Okay.
You probably know about these, that the students transcribed, and they were illegal, and then they became legal. And I'm from Canada originally, so that's how I learned jazz, was getting these books and
Wow.
reading through them with my friends. And they were all full of jazz standards. And in all of these books, there was only one woman composer. It was Anne Ronald on Willow Weep for me.
Okay.
So the Institute has, created Terri Lyne released a book called The New Standards, Volume 1, featuring compositions by women composers. And it's kind of corrective work to bring more women composers and music compositions into the jazz canon.
Right. Very good. And that release you just spoke of from Terri Lyne Carrington received some awards and attention. Is that the recording we're
Yes.
speaking of? Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. New Standards, Volume 1.
I enjoyed that very much. What, 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 So moving on, kind of up to Lost in Geneva, which for the listeners is an upcoming release from Kris Davis in September of this year. Interesting subject you address. I've actually often thought about how exhausting it is to be a musician, a jazz musician in general, going all the way back to when Count Basie and Duke and everybody else used to drag themselves on trains or on buses or from place to place, aside from the inborn prejudice of not being able to stay in a local hotel or eat in a local restaurant, that by the time you got on stage, it's like, what's left of your energy level? So Kris addresses this somewhat in her in the creative juices in Lost in Geneva, but I'll let you speak a little bit about it for the audience's sake. The setup for this is Lost in Geneva might lead you down the path of thinking in terms of a disorientation with international travel, jet lag, tight deadlines, all the rest. How does that bring the three of you together, and how do you make the creative juices flow on this subject? So that's a good question.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I mean, traveling around it is exhausting, and sometimes you just feel disoriented, where am I,
right.
And like you said, trying to will up the energy to play every night, but that's the fun part. So
right.
You get up there and you're like, okay,
suddenly bingo, you're on stage and the energy comes back sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when it can't, because you literally, every ounce of energy's been sucked from you for some horrible, terrible traffic travel experience. It's also just like forgiveness, of each other, like kindness and forgiveness. Like, okay, we're exhausted, but we're gonna do the best we can. And the same with sound. If the sound's not great, when somebody's like struggling with that, and one of your bandmates is struggling, and there's just always this like feeling, at least in the trio, of forgiveness and kindness and understanding that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I certainly can only imagine on top of the kind of the stress-related tight deadlines and being stuck in rush hour traffic and still trying to make to the concert on time, then you have to park that on a shelf and take a deep breath and go forward. So anyway, so that is going to be a very creative and interesting subject matter as expressed through music. So I will tell the audience to look forward to Kris's release in September of Lost in Geneva. We're just about out of time already, Kris, but I always want to give artists an opportunity to maybe talk a little bit further about any upcoming performances or projects. We've obviously already talked about Lost in Geneva. Are there some particular performances that are upcoming or other projects on your table right now?
Yeah, well, the trio is traveling more to support the release of this new album. So we're going to Europe for the summer festivals. We're going to Australia in the fall. Wow. Okay. Back to Europe a few times, some U.S. festivals. And then I'm also playing with a trio that I haven't played with in... it might be like 20 years now. Oh, wow. It's with Tyshawn, Sorey, and Ingrid Laubrock. We had a trio called Paradoxical Frog, and we're reviving that band at the Village Vanguard on July 21st through 26th. And that was a really important band for me, informative band, just for every aspect of my playing as a composer, as a pianist. So I'm very excited to revisit music with them, some old music and some new things. Great.
Well, you sound like you have a very exciting and busy schedule, and I'll ask audiences to look forward to Kris's upcoming release in September of Lost in Geneva. So thank you again for joining us today, Kris, and wish you all the positive karma in your future musical directions and adventures, which adventures they will be, certainly. So that's the exciting part of your world in many ways. So thank you again for your time today.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Take care.